Hello there, it's Andy Ewens from FormaServe once again. In this short how-to on IBMi video set, we'll be taking a look at Node-RED. What is it? How do we get it? How do we install it? How do we use it? And more importantly, how do we interact and get data from our IBMi? All those questions will be answered. All the stuff we use in this video can be found on our GitHub page. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Node-RED uses flow-based programming. You put the building blocks on a page, then join them together. For us old uns, think of a flow as a flow diagram we got taught about all those years ago. You do not need to know the underlying programming that is produced under the covers. It has a runtime and an editor. The editor is browser-based, where we use a flow editor. You drag the nodes from a palette onto the workspace and wire them together. Node-RED was originally developed by IBM and is now part of the OpenJS Foundation. More details about Node-RED can be found at their website, node-red.org. The link is in the description below. Let me take a minute to give you a quick overview of how Node-RED works. The concept of Node-RED is very simple. A node passes a message to another node. This message is a JavaScript object that can contain absolutely anything, from calling an API to sending tweets, emails, etc. etc. We have to thank the Node-RED developers for creating a simple but very functional product. Hats off to them. Firstly, we need some prereqs installed before we tackle Node-RED. You probably already have them installed. They are the PACE environment 5770 SS1 option 33, the OpenSSH tools of 5733 SC1 option 1, and the latest Node.js installed. Use the latest version that's available. Now we have covered the prereqs, let us move on to installing Node-RED. We don't use Yum nor the ACS Open Source Package Management to install Node-RED. We use npm Node Package Manager. Back to our terminal session and run npm i-g node-red. The I is for install and the -g to install it globally so it's available to all users. That chugs away for a while and it's all done. Now we have it installed, we need to start the Node-RED server. This must be running before we can do anything with Node-RED. This is started, again in our shell session, I'm getting used to saying that now, /qopensys/pkgs/lib/node.js18/bin/node-red. If you're not running Node at version 18, change the bit in the middle to what you are running. For example, Node.js 14. If you already have the directory structure in your path statement, you can just run node-red. That makes it a lot easier, to be honest. I can remember that. Once started, leave this session running now. It's worth keeping an eye on it just for any errors. If you don't want the hassle of starting the Node-RED server every time, we can run it as a batch job or keep it as a job schedule entry for ease. Full details on the commands to run for this can be found on our GitHub training repo, flearning, under Node-RED, and it's called start_node-red.md. Again, link in the description. Now the server has started, point your browser at your IBMi and use port 1880. And we are ready to go. Let me show you a quick run round what we have here. Down the left hand pane we have the nodes grouped into sections. We can add to these, we'll be doing so in a mo. Next we have the main canvas where we place our nodes to make up the flow. Down the right hand side we have an informational section. At the top we have a deploy button which is used to create our program to run. A sort of compile button. At the very right hand side is a drop down menu. Again, we'll be using that later. Let me give it a quick test. I'll drag an inject node onto the canvas. I'll drag a debug node onto the canvas and wire them together. Nodes always flow from the left to the right. We can place the nodes wherever we like on the canvas, makes no difference. As I said earlier, press the deploy button to create our program flow. Then to fire the flow, we click to the button on the left of the inject node. By default, it will send a timestamp value to the debug node, which will then display the timestamp in the debug window. The number we see here is the number of seconds since the 1st of January 1970. Ah, what a good year that was. This is a typical Unix timestamp format, but if we click on the timestamp, it will show the value in an ISO style format. If we click again, we get other formats, all very useful. To get into the property of the eject node, we click on the node. Here we can see the message.payload property is set to a timestamp by default, and that's what we have just seen. If we click the drop down next to the message.payload, we can select a string, and I'll type in "Hello Andy." Press done, then deploy, and click the inject node. And now "Hello Andy" has been sent to the debug window. We can see the properties of the inject node. We can set the message.payload and the message.topic if we wish, but what if we want something else? We press the add button down the bottom and then we get a new input. This time we will change the message.value to have company and then a value. We can delete the message.topic as it's not being used. We could leave it without a value, but I like things neat and tidy. Back to the Navy ways of doing things. Press deploy again and fire off the inject node. This time we get "Hello Andy" in the debug window. What's going on? We set the message.company value to FormaServe. If we click on the debug node, we can see why. By default, it only shows message.payload. We can change it to show the complete message object if we want to. Press done and deploy again and press the inject node. I need that on repeat. Ah, that's better. Let me expand the complete message object. Here we can see the message ID. Every object has one. We can ignore that, to be honest. Next we see the payload property set to "Hello Andy", and finally the company property set to FormaServe Systems Limited. We can suppress the debug messages being displayed by clicking the button at the right of the debug node. You do not have to use the deploy button to toggle this on or off. Very handy. If we want the debug node to only list out the company name, we can specify that in the output of the debug properties. I'll clear the debug messages down to give us a clean sheet. Now in the debug pane, we only see the details we want. Let's move on to the DB2 stuff. For this we need to install the DB2 adapter. For those Node developers listening, this adapter is really a front end to the Node IDB connector you may have used natively. We take the three bars top right and select Manage Palette. Then select the Install tab and search for IBMi. Then press the Install on the Contrib DB2 for I and click the Install button. Not surprisingly, I already have this installed. If you get an error installing the DB2 adapter, like I did, and some others, I have written an article on pyoy.eu on how we can resolve this. Again, the link in the description. You'll have to use npm Node Package Manager to install its dependencies first. So we change directory into the .node-red directory, and then a quick npm I for install idb-connector. Once this is finished, run npm I node-red-contrib-db2-4-I. And this time it installs. If we then do an npm list, we can see both the Node-RED adapter and its dependencies. A great tip there, Andy. Now we have the DB2 adapter installed manually. If we check our palette, we can now see that the adapter has been installed. with the two nodes we need for DB2 for I, the config and the DB2 for I adapter. Now we have the DB2 adapter, we'd better put it to use. I'll drag an inject node and a debug node onto the canvas, connect the two together, then finding the DB2 adapter, I'll put DB2 in the node search box. There it is, and I'll drop that onto the wire between the two nodes on our canvas. We can see the DB2 node has a red triangle above it. This means there is something wrong with the config. If we double click on it to bring up the properties, we can then see the red box where the problem is. Click on the pencil on the side to open up a new config. Fill in the details. You can leave the user ID and password blank and it will take the authority from the connection server job. It is a good idea to initially fill in the details with a good whack of authority so we won't hit any security issues to begin with. We can always revisit it later. I'll tick the single array result mode so it will return a complete record set in an array. Personally, I'd like to see this as the default. One day, maybe. If I tick the help icon, it will open the manual for the DB2 adapter. It shows that I need to supply the SQL statement in the message.payload property. I can set that in the inject node. Let's go back to that. Double click on the inject node to bring up the properties. And in the message.payload property, click the drop down and select string. Then enter the SQL statement. A nice easy one to start with. Select everything from QIWS schema, and the table is QCustCDT, a customer table supplied by IBM, great for testing. We don't need the message.topic, press the X to get rid of it. Click done and press the deploy button. Then we will fire off the inject, and in the debug panel we can see the message.payload has been returned as an array with 12 elements. I'll expand that and we can see each record. Record number 1, number 2, and so on. Yep, that's all working. Now we have database access sorted, let me show you how we can execute commands on our IBMi. At this time, we have two methods for executing commands. The first way is to use SPs, stored procedures, using the DB2 adapter that we now have working. And the second way is to use the Node-RED built-in node called exec. Time for a demo. If I use ACS to look into a schema I have on my IBMi, we can see I have a stored procedure called wages update that updates every employee in a country code with a bonus. Sounds good. We can see it has two parameters. Both of them are input. The first is a country code and the second a value. It has no output. Back to Node-RED. In the inject node, we double click it to get to the properties again and replace the select statement with the SP call. So call isdb.wages_update and in brackets the parameters. First one in quotes is UK, then a comma, and then an integer value of 1000. Press the done button, then deploy, and clear all the previous debug messages, then inject. We can see from the debug node we didn't get any errors back from our SP. Job done. All UK employees get a grand bonus. Happy New Year. Next, let me send a message to a message queue using stored procedures. I'm using the send message command here for an example, but it can be any command, IBM's or even yours. I'll double click the inject node once again, and this time I'll call the qsys2.qcommandexec stored procedure with the parameters in quotes of send message, hello space Andy. Press done and deploy, then press the inject node. Over to a good old 5250 session and check my messages. And there we are, a great way to call any program or commands remotely from Node-RED. The next way we can execute commands, as I said previously, is the exec node. Let me drag that onto the canvas. The exec node has one input and three outputs. The input takes our command as, and the name states, it executes whatever we supply to it. This is known as standard input, stdin. The three outputs relate to standard output, standard error, and the last output is the return code from the command that was executed. If you need to acquire more knowledge on standard in, standard out, and standard error, it might be worth taking a look at our Bash videos playlist. For now, ignore the blue spot. It is reminding us that changes have not yet been deployed. A quick tip: if we press Ctrl and left mouse button, we get a quick shortcut menu. Choose Inject from there. And over here we will have three debug nodes. Wire those all up. Lining them up better, you get very OCD doing Node-RED. Click on the eject node to enter the string we are going to send to the exec node. We will use the bash built-in function of system, then in quotes, create lib jan 2023, close the quotes and press done. Next to the properties of the exec node, we are going to append the command with the message payload we specified in the previous inject node. Then over to the appearance button where we will put in some labels on the input and output. Firstly, standard in as the input, then standard out, standard error, and finally return code. Press done. Now when we hover over the inputs and the outputs, we have better descriptions. Well worth doing. Next we will deploy the flow and press the inject node. We can see from debug 24 the library has been created. And debug 26 has a return code of 0. All good, library created. Clear the debug messages and run it again. This time we get an error from debug 25 telling us the library already exists, and the return code debug says the command failed. Just what we would expect. I'll copy the inject node and make that delete the library. I'll copy and paste the inject node. Let me give this first node a better label. Create library. And the second one, delete library, and change the CRT with a DLT. Press done. Wire that new node to the exec. Clear all messages for a clean slate. Then press deploy. If I press the delete library inject, we get a library deleted back. All good. Then create the library, then we delete it. Clear all messages, and the final test, press the delete again, and it fails with a CPF 2110, library not found. That's how we can easily run commands from Node-RED using the exec node. And that has given you a quick intro on how easy it is to use Node-RED to access data and run commands on our IBMi. Stand by for further videos on Node-RED, where we will show you some of the great IoT flows we have developed, all integrating very neatly with the IBMi. If you need any further details about open source or IBMi, check out all our videos at learning.formaserve.co.uk and the articles we have written for powerwire.eu. I hope you find them useful and let us know if there are any other topics you want us to cover. Even through these difficult times, my company, FormaServe, is still providing training on our favourite platform, the IBMi. Whether it's remotely, through a mask, we are still here for you. If it's traditional programming using RPG and CL, or the modern methods of integrating open source into your infrastructure, we are here to help. We have over 30 years of teaching on the IBMi. Why not use us to get up to date and be at the forefront of the post-pandemic world? FormaServe uses Microsoft Teams software to develop top-notch training material. Take a look. You will not be disappointed. As many students have found, all our training is very informal, it's the way to learn. Find out what it's like to have fun while training. And that wraps up this quick video. Thank you for watching our how-to on IBMi video set. I hope you found them useful. Keep checking out our website learning.formaserve.co.uk and our YouTube channel. We regularly add new ones. Stay safe and we'll see you soon. Thank you.